Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rafał Szczechura. I work for Six Payments Services, which is one of the billing agents present on Polish and the European market. And payments are one of the elements of Omnichannel, but it's only one of the elements of Omnichannel. And in my presentation, I will try to present this subject in a more broader sense, because the previous presentations showed us many interesting things, many statistical data, and but the subject of omnichannel itself wasn't dealt with very precisely. So maybe let's start from the very beginning. Omnichannel is not something completely new, but in Poland, for some time, presentations and meetings around omnichannel like this one are getting more and more popular. And the subject of omnichannel appeared 10 years ago, not in Poland, but in the United States and in the West. And when it comes to the subject, it has its own beginnings, its historical beginnings even earlier, and I allowed myself to show you one of the analysis, one of the theories that were made by Michael Porter, five forces, the theory of five forces, and all of us that studied economics probably dealt with that. And why am I talking about this? Well, because the theories or the programs that allow us to analyze the market and that were created nearly 40 years ago, in its principles also covered omnichannel. Why do I say that? Because omnichannel is really a challenge that companies want to think about or started to think about because of two reasons. First, competitiveness, internal competitiveness, and because of the customers' expectations. And when we look at omnichannel and the solutions that cost to integrate different sales channels, we can see that companies that take on this challenge, because it is a challenge, of course, don't do it because they want to do it and they like it, but this is what the competitors expect from them and require from them. And as one of my predecessors said, also legal situation requires that from them. And the act on tax trade is also a short-term solution, and maybe it will change in a year, maybe this act will change, but the principles, internal competitiveness and the expectations of the consumers will stay in place. And I think that if we want to integrate our sales channels, we should do it in a long term. So it should be a long-term plan and not a short-term plan. So we shouldn't this year decide, okay, let's do e-commerce because the new tax does not cover e-commerce. And another thing is a second slide where you can see some kind of theory translating into practice. Also, many years ago, one of the economists and mathematicians, Harry Igor Ansoff, came up with a matrix that establishes some kind of assuming of a strategy for a company where the market, either the market is new or old, or the market is old and there is a new product introduced. And I'm showing you here the horizontal integration, because omnichannel is the first of these strategies. We are acting on an old market because we talk about selling products that already exists through new channels. So we want to integrate the sales on every channel, but the
Czy
sales
my w
of a known
ogóle, czy
product.
sklepy, czy duże
Do
sieci
we or do
w
big
ogóle
chains
powinny, czy muszą w ogóle
know,
integrować swoje kanały
should, and
sprzedaży?
do they have to
E,
integrate their sales channels?
Spójrzmy też historycznie.
Let's look at it from the
Tutaj są
historic point of
przypadki
view.
ewolucji trzech
We have here
produktów
an
i tu
evolution
mówimy
of
akurat o
three
produktach, a
different
nie o
products, and we talk about products
kanałach
here and
sprzedaży.
not sales
Jest to
channels.
oczywiście
First of
aparat
all, this is
fotograficzny,
camera,
telewizor i
a
telefon.
camera, a TV,
Z tymi
and a
trzema
telephone. With these
ewolucjami
three
wiążą się
evolutions,
ogromne problemy lub
different
też
huge
upadki potężnych
problems are
korporacji, które
connected,
na czas
and the
nie
collapse of
zareagowały na
corporations
zmiany,
is
które na
connected
rynku
because they
występują.
did not react to the
Jeżeli chodzi o
changes on the
aparat
market. When it comes
fotograficzny,
to a
wszyscy
camera, we all know
znamy firmę Kodak,
Kodak,
która była
a
potentatem na
company
rynku
that was
aparatów,
the biggest player
szczególnie
on the
małoobrazkowych. To jest
camera
taki aparat,
market,
do którego
and
zakładamy
it
w
was
misę
the biggest
film
company
i
that
później wywołujemy
produced
zdjęcia.
cameras with this
W
special
latach
film.
80.
And in
już
the
były
80s, there were already some first
zapowiedzi tego, że będzie problem,
information
ponieważ
that
tak zwane
there will
tygrysy,
be problem
szczególnie
with that because
azjatyckie,
the Asian
zaczęły
tigers
bardzo napierać
started
i stawiać
to
na nowe technologie.
come up with new
I
technologies,
w
and in
końcu
the end, the
z
company that
kilkudziesięciu
had
tysięcy osób zatrudnionych
several
w
thousand
Kodaku zostało
people,
tylko kilka tysięcy.
um,
Wcześniej, w
only a
latach
few
50.,
thousand stayed
60.,
there. And in the
mówiło się w
50s, in the
Stanach,
60s, you would
siedziba
say
Kodaka znajduje się w
in the
stanie
US
Nowy Jork.
that the seat
I
in New
właściwie to
York,
było
the
takie
seat of
miasteczko
Kodak,
Kodaka, gdzie
created a
była
small town of their
służba
own.
zdrowia
They had their own
Kodaka, straż
health
pożarna,
service, their
wszystko Kodaka.
own fire
Mówiło
brigades,
się,
and
że
so
jak
on.
po
And if you
średniej
go
szkole
to Kodak
trafisz do
after
Kodaka, to
your
będziesz
high
tam
school,
już
you will
pracował do
work there until
emerytury,
your
bo
pension
warunki,
because
które
the
oni
conditions
oferowali,
they
były tak konkurencyjne w
gave you
stosunku do
were
innych firm.
so competitive in
To
relation
powiedzmy
to different
zasiedzenie
other
i brak
companies.
spojrzenia w
And
przód
this lack
spowodowało,
of
że
perspective and
w
lack
latach
of looking forward
2000 i to możecie Państwo znaleźć
caused
sobie na
that
YouTubie, bo ja też
in
przygotowując się
the
szukałem różnych rzeczy.
Kodak, in a
Bardzo
very spectacular
spektakularnie
way, opened new era. They
jakby
even
Kodak
destroyed a
otworzył nową
few
erę i
buildings of
wyburzył
their headquarters, and it
kilka
was a
budynków
great
swojej
party.
siedziby.
And
Było
several
całe
thousand
show,
people
zimne
lost
napoje
their
i
jobs
tak
this
dalej,
way
więc
or
było
another.
przyjemnie.
And the other
Oczywiście te
example
kilkadziesiąt
is the
tysięcy ludzi
TV
straciło
set.
pracę
And
w
here
ten
we
czy w
had
inny
very
sposób.
different
Drugi przypadek
innovations like an
to jest
remote control and so
telewizor
on.
i tutaj też
But
mamy takie przejście.
a key
Oczywiście w
element
międzyczasie tam
here
różne rzeczy
is
wymyślano, jak
the
pilota
move
do
from
telewizora
the
i tak dalej, natomiast
kinescope
kluczowym
television
elementem
through
jest ten element
black and
przejścia
white and
z
colorful
telewizji
one
kineskopowej.
into the new
Oczywiście po drodze
technology. And
jeszcze
there
była
was a
czarno-biała
company,
i
Radio
kolorowa, natomiast na nową
Corporation of
technologię.
America in the United
I
States
tutaj
that
w Stanach
was the
Zjednoczonych
biggest
działała taka firma
producer of
Radio Corporation of
these kinescope
America,
lamps, and
która tak naprawdę
they
po
were the
pierwsze
biggest
była
producer in the United
największym
States. And secondly,
producentem
they came up
lamp
and
do
patented one
telewizorów
of the standards
kineskopowych
of
w
colorful
Stanach
television.
Zjednoczonych, a po
So they
drugie
were
jeszcze
not
dodatkowo
an
wymyśliła i
uninnovative
opatentowała
company,
jeden
but they
ze standardów
overslept a bit,
telewizji kolorowej, więc to
and
nie była firma,
their end
która
was
nie wymyślała,
pretty
natomiast
horrible
przespała
because they were
totalnie
taken over by
ten
General
element.
Electric and
Jej
divided into a
koniec
few
był powiedzmy pracy, bo
smaller
została
companies,
przejęta
and
przez
some of the
General
companies from
Electric,
this
podzielona na różne
company
spółki i
are
sprzedana.
still present on the
Jeszcze
market.
możecie Państwo na pewno
Then we
znaleźć, bo
have a landline
niektóre
phone, and
spółki
not to
z
get
części tej firmy
too
działają na rynku.
complicated about it,
Telefon
we have
stacjonarny,
this
żeby się nie
landline phone that
rozgadywać za
turned to
dużo, tu mamy takie przejście z
cell
komórkowego na
phones and
smartfon i
smartphones,
każdy
and
z
we
nas
all know
pewnie zna firmę
Nokia
Nokia
and
i jej
its
problemy,
problems, and it was sold to
sprzedaż do Microsoftu, teraz
Microsoft and then
ostatnio
sold to
sprzedaż
one of the
do
biggest
jednego z największych, a właściwie
producers
największego producenta
and
sprzętu
subcontractors
i
for huge
poddostawcy
corporations.
dla wielkich
Here we have
korporacji.
another example, an
E,
example that is
Tutaj
maybe more
przypadek
directly
bardziej
linked to
taki nawet
omnichannel,
można
because
powiedzieć
here we do
bezpośrednio
not talk about a product but
bezpośrednio
what
odnoszący się
was
do
happening
Omnichannel, bo tu nie
around
mówimy
the
o
product.
produkcie, a
And
właściwie
Ford
o
Model
tym,
T
co wokół produktu
you have probably heard about it, that you can buy it in every color as long as it's black. So it's this so it's this model precisely, and what was very important there, it was the product. And Henry Ford, from the youngest age, would think in a very rational and logical way, and that's why he came up with constructing different equipment and mainly automobiles. And he came up with a very easy and reliable construction, and it was very helpful also for the people having farms. And we can see a photo here. This is a part of the wheel, a hub, which is in the wheel, and this hub was constructed in such a way that after raising the back of the car and taking off the wheel, you could put a special transmission line and simply power the equipment on a farm, on an agricultural farm. So there are a few such elements in this car that allowed for that. It was a very simple construction, and Ford as first also introduced spare parts. So if you bought a car at that time, you either had to produce on your own the spare part or order it at the producer for a high price. And Ford not only produced spare parts but also cataloged them, and you could order them in for a smaller price. And also this production process improvement which relates to omnichannel, because Ford, maybe not the only one, because it was known where other producers were concerned, and they were producing it with a production line. So you had a production line and at other producers where you could build the car at one part, you had to wait for some parts, and you would assemble it at a different place. And Ford divided the groups of workers, and the car was being moved with a line as it would go normally on a line, and the groups of workers would assemble it from the prepared parts. So he not only shortened the time of production by starting this process. At the beginning, the time of production would take 12 hours to produce one car. It was produced from the 1908 to 1927, and the end of production, it would take only 90 minutes. It not only brought about lowering of costs, but also production possibilities, better production possibilities. In 1908, Ford T cost $1,000. At the end of production, $260. And we can see also how it looked like in comparison. There were 13,000 workers that would produce 300,000 Ford Model T, but in 299 other companies with 60,000 workers would build 280,000 cars. At that time, Ford also broke a record by building 15 million cars. Only Volkswagen Beetle was better because they produced 21 million. This is all about when it comes to history, and I showed you that omnichannel is nothing new when it comes to its groundwork and its principles, and technology is really important here. And when we think about the future, we should also go back in time in order simply not to reinvent the wheel. When it comes to payments in omnichannel, we can see that, yeah, I don't have many statistical data here, but there are a few important elements of that, which are, for example, this combination of stationary sales and the online sales, as well as the increase of payments on the Polish market. And here we can see a comparison in 10 years, how payments raised from 32 billion to 175 billion when it comes to card payments from 2005 to 2015. When it comes to other payments, we can do money transfers, card payments, cash, and so on. We also talk about Blik, MasterPass. These are the new methods, and checks were not popularized in Poland because of different reasons. And as we can see, here is a comparison when it comes to card payments in brick and mortar shops and on the internet. And there's a huge gap, and it was also visible previously. Even though we talk a lot about e-commerce market in Poland, it's not being used properly. And when we compare 175 billion of card transactions for goods and services with 4.7 billion online, it's a huge chasm. And these relations in the Western Europe look far better. And Poland is a very specific market, which was already mentioned, and cards online are used only up to 7% of all the transactions. And here I would like to talk about a little bit about penetration or overlapping. Where do we look for products, watch some products, and where do we buy? These are the statistics made by OBOP. And this statistical data were also needed for me to confirm some of my theories without my own statistics. And even though there is a huge chasm between e-commerce and brick-and-mortar shops, we can see that these values and that the e-commerce market is growing far faster than the payment market, the transaction market online. It was only 0.6 transactions. Now it's 2.6 of transactions in e-commerce. When it comes to payments and new possibilities, we can see that if we want to pay attention to more details on integration, the next speaker will tell us more about that from Przelewy24.com, but I would only like to say that at the moment the operators and the billing agents and payment operators are offering all the methods that are present on the market and that can be integrated within one omni-channel package. But about this package I will tell you more in a few, because payments in omni-channel, omni-channel does not only mean payments. So we have a terminal, online store, mobile payments, consultant payments, so that we don't need our own website, but we can do it over a call center, for example, and we can process such transactions remotely. And now the most or broadly used method is the possibility to pay through social media. And the integration, as we see, the payments are only one element of omnichannel. So I think that there is a lot being told about omnichannel, but there is no real omnichannel where everything is integrated. The logistics connected with deliveries, the external logistics from different sales channels, integrated reporting. This should be all the things integrated there, and as well as the channels of integration, of interaction and sales. This should all be an issue here, as well as regulations. So all the new amendments of the acts, the payment acts that are already in force, as well as personal data protection acts, where we personalize advertisements in omnichannel. So this omni-channel system that will be integrated in one and that will take care of all these elements has to be very flexible and has to be expanded and upgraded because of new forms of payment, for example, emerging, like Blick or social media, like Facebook. There was no Facebook payment a few years ago, and now it's there. So this system would have to be upgraded all the time and dedicated for the needs of a particular company. So it is very important in Poland at this very early stage of developing omnichannel. We cannot speak about something like a ready system that can be used by everyone. Everyone will probably need to make some amendments in order to implement this system. But I won't be that pessimistic, and I would like to talk about the hotel business because we could allow ourselves a statement that omnichannel is already working for the hotel business. As you can see, for the past few years, hotels are were nearly forced to, maybe because of their own sluggishness, because they did not see online agents who would be selling hotel rooms, and the market has been overtaken a little bit by independent operators. And depending on the country, you can book a hotel room, and in some countries, 50% of bookings are being done through independent operators like Booking.com or HRS, such companies. So, first of all, hotel system of management has to be integrated with their own website where these reservations come in, with the reservations operators, with these booking operators, which is done through intermediaries that aggregate some other companies, and there are many of such companies. Booking.com is only an example. And you also have phone bookings, on-site bookings, and other. So the hotel management system has to integrate all these elements and many other solutions, because a hotel is not even a large format store and has its own requirements. So that would be all, but I wanted to mention one other thing, an important thing, which is that omnichannel, when it comes to omnichannel, an element that probably bounds a customer is this personalization of advertisements. And I would also like to go back in time a bit because it's not a very old subject. When I was looking for information for this conference, I recalled a movie that was made in 2002, the title of which is The Minority Report. And in Minority Report, you had a few scenes that, when we look at the present technology, they can really be really similar to what happens now. And Tom Cruise, who played the main character, enters a store, and very small devices that looked like popular beacons communicating with devices were communicating with the human. They would scan the retina from quite a distance and then transfer the information, the identification information data, to the central system, and it worked just like beacons. now,
tylko
but
że
beacons of course cooperate with a
współpracując z
phone or
urządzeniami, na
any other
przykład
device,
telefonem, identyfikują nas po
and the
telefonie,
transfer that
następował
happened
transfer i
in the film,
bezpośrednio do sklepu
you would get a
zwrot
feedback
informacji
with
z spersonalizowaną
personalized
ofertą. Dzień dobry
info,
panie
and there was this good
Yamamoto.
morning
Tam
Mr.
akurat była
Yamamoto,
taka scena,
because
ponieważ każdy
every
system
system has its
może mieć
issues, and
problemy.
Tom
Tom
Cruise was after a
Cruise akurat tam
transplant
zrobił
of
sobie przestrzep oczu
eyes,
i
and he was being
identyfikowano go jako innego
identified as a
człowieka.
different person.
Więc
So this may be
taka dygresja,
also
że warto się zastanowić, w jaki
a
sposób tworzymy
remark
systemy,
on
które
how we
będą
build
obsługiwać
systems
naszych
for our
klientów, bo być
customers,
może
because maybe we will
popełnimy
make
pewien błąd
a
i
mistake
zrobimy go w ten sposób, że
that
nie chcielibyśmy
will
być
cause
klientem
us
naszego
not to
własnego
want
sklepu.
to be a customer
Dziękuję
of
bardzo.
of our own store. Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions? If nobody has questions, if you have any questions, maybe you can ask them afterwards. So I would like to invite you to a 20-minute break. Thank you.